Hi, I'm Tariq Melrose. Today's headline was about transparency, yet somehow they forgot the transparency part. Classic. What we got instead was a fog machine of vague statements and misdirection. Luckily, I've got my flashlight. If you're tired of being fed ambiguity with the silver spoon, hit that subscribe button because here, we don't just look, we see. And what's coming next deserves to be seen with clarity.
When a Trump official trashes the Constitution, defies Congress, and weaponizes government against citizens, that's not leadership, it's authoritarianism. Stay tuned, because in this video, we're exposing how the GOP turns power into a tool for corruption, fear, and lawlessness.
Gentlelady's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Ramirez for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, it's good to see you. I'm going to go straight to the questions because I have a lot of them. Let me start just following up with Congressman Goldman about judiciary. Do you agree that the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land? Yes or no, Secretary?
We are
Yes.
abiding by all federal judges' orders, absolutely.
So yes, it's a co-equal branch of government. Okay, well, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Do you agree that Congress is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor legislation and appropriations duly authorized by Congress? Yes or no?
Yes, that's why
Thank
I'm
you.
thrilled to work
Well,
for
let me
the
ask you the
president that is
follow-up question
enforcing
here
the
because I
laws.
have a lot of them. Do you agree that Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse? Yes or no?
Yes, that is a duty
Do you
of
believe
Congress
that,
to be
let me
able
ask
to
you another
appropriate
follow-up, it's
funds.
just yes or no. Do you believe you have the power to disregard congressional appropriations and unilaterally repurpose funds that have been duly appropriated by Congress? Yes or no?
Ma'am, we are not doing that.
So the
We are
answer to
using
you is
dollars
no.
as to
All
how
right,
they
well,
were
it was a yes
appropriated
or no,
for ensuring the
Secretary. Let me
programs have
continue.
integrity.
Interestingly, you said no. But since you've been Secretary, you have repeatedly disregarded the law. You have illegally impounded funds that Congress appropriated and that your branch of government must implement pursuant to the law. Yet you've closed offices established in law, including the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, the Office of the Citizenship and Immigration Services, and you've canceled contracts for programs authorized in law, including shelter and service programs and citizenship and integration grants. You've obstructed and roughed up members of this committee as they attempted to conduct congressional oversight, and then you vilified them. But my question is, if they were so bad, why were they allowed to go in after to conduct oversight? Let me just continue. You redirected funds to terrorize our communities. You created taxpayer-funded political propaganda campaigns to terrorize families and children who don't sleep at night because of the terror of those commercials that you are putting out there. You hold sick, disrespectful press conferences in my state where, let me be clear, you are not welcome. You corruptly used emergency authority to avoid procurement to make Trump's private prison donors richer by directing $45 billion for them to expand ICE detention centers. You defunded work to address real threats to the homeland, all while you pursued college newspaper editors, labor leaders, and even a Harvard scientist who failed to declare frog embryos at the airport. Clearly, we don't have time for all my questions, so I have 13 pages worth of questions that I will be submitting to the record that I expect you and the administration to answer. But here is my final question to you. When you took your oath, did you swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America? Yes or no?
Yes, I did.
So I find that laughable. You don't behave like someone who takes that oath seriously. And let me tell you why. We don't live in a dictatorship or a monarchy. Trump's will is not the guiding doctrine of this nation, and our country is not a playground for his or your twisted authoritarian fantasies. We are a democracy. We defend the Constitution and we affirm the rule of law. We respect the co-equal branches of government and we uphold our rights, even when we disagree. The foundation of our nation is based on a core set of constitutional rights upon which our prosperity, our pluralism, and our peace depend on it. You, however, have been leading this work for 116 days. And in that time, You have profiled and dehumanized our neighbors. You've betrayed our constitutional commitment to due process. You've deported United States citizens. You've undermined the courts. You've broken the law. You've engaged in corruption, and you've weaponized the immigration system to violate civil rights. As Senator Murphy perfectly stated, your department is out of control, but you're responsible. You have betrayed the sacred fundamentals of your oath. And I believe to my core that you are not fit to hold the office. And I again, to your face, demand your immediate resignation, and I put it and place it on the record for all of us to see. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Generally yields. Mr. Gabarino is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you so much for being here today. I'm the chairman of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity Infrastructure Protection, so I work with CISA a lot.
What we just watched was not some mild policy disagreement or harmless partisan back and forth. This was a full-on dismantling of a Trump-era DHS officials' credibility and a devastating indictment of how the Republican Party under Trump has twisted the executive branch into a tool for corruption, fear, and authoritarian control. Congressman Ramirez didn't just ask tough questions. He walked the secretary step by step through the basic constitutional framework of our democracy, the judiciary, Congress, and the executive branch as co-equal branches of government. These aren't trick questions. They're Civics 101. Yet, in true Trump Republican fashion, the answers came with hedges, dodges, and an alarming inability to give a straight yes or no when it actually mattered. First, Ramirez made the secretary acknowledge, on the record, that the judiciary is a co-equal branch and that its rulings must be honored. Fine. Easy enough. Then came Congress. Same question. Is Congress a co-equal branch? Does Article 1 give it the power of the purse? Again, a reluctant yes. But here's where the mask starts to slip. When pressed on whether the executive branch has the power to disregard congressional appropriations and repurpose those funds unilaterally, the secretary insists we are not doing that. That's when Ramirez lowered the boom, because the record and the facts say otherwise. Under this secretary's leadership, the DHS has repeatedly defied Congress by impounding funds that were lawfully appropriated. They've closed entire offices that were established in law: the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, the Office of Immigration Detention Oversight, the Office of Citizenship and Immigration Services. These aren't meaningless bureaucratic desks. They're watchdogs meant to keep the system fair and humane. And in their place, a void where oversight should be replaced with politically motivated propaganda operations designed to scare immigrant communities into silence. And let's talk about that propaganda. Ramirez called it out for what it is: taxpayer-funded fear campaigns, complete with ominous commercials meant to terrorize families and children into thinking ICE could come for them at any moment. This is the Trump playbook to the letter. Keep vulnerable communities in a state of fear so they're less likely to assert their rights. It's government as an intimidation machine, and it's a direct violation of the constitutional principles this secretary swore to uphold. But the rot doesn't stop at fear-mongering. Ramirez exposed something even darker: the funneling of $45 billion in emergency funds to expand ICE detention centers, conveniently enriching Trump's private prison donors. That's not just bad optics, that's corruption, plain and simple, using public money to pad the pockets of political allies. And while they were busy shoveling cash to private prison interests, they were defunding programs to address actual threats to homeland security. And it gets pettier. This DHS didn't just target dangerous actors. They went after college newspaper editors, labor leaders, and even a Harvard scientist whose crime was failing to declare frog embryos at the airport. That's where the priorities are under Trump-aligned leadership: chase headlines, punish dissent, and ignore the real work of keeping Americans safe. By the time Ramirez got to his final point, the picture was crystal clear. In just 116 days, this secretary has managed to profile and dehumanize neighbors, betray the constitutional guarantee of due process, deport U.S. citizens, undermine the courts, break the law, engage in corruption, and weaponize the immigration system as a political bludgeon. That's not leadership. That's a direct assault on democracy itself. And Ramirez didn't mince words. He demanded the secretary's immediate resignation, putting it squarely on the record. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about partisan point scoring. It's about whether we still have an executive branch that respects the Constitution, honors the separation of powers, and serves the people instead of the political whims of one man and his authoritarian fantasies. Let's be absolutely clear here. What Ramirez described is exactly what happens when Trump Republicans run the executive branch. Congress becomes an inconvenience to be circumvented. The courts become a nuisance to be defied. The press becomes an enemy to be discredited. And the machinery of government, from ICE to DHS, becomes a weapon to crush political opponents and terrorize vulnerable communities. This isn't hyperbole. It's not theory. It's on the record. And if you think this kind of power abuse stops at immigration policy, you haven't been paying attention. Once you normalize this behavior in one area, it bleeds into everything. Voting rights, reproductive freedom, LGBTQ protections, even the independence of the press. If the executive branch can ignore Congress and cherry-pick which laws to follow, then democracy itself is on life support. And here's the part that should scare every American. None of this is an accident. The Trump GOP doesn't want a co-equal Congress. They don't want an independent judiciary. They want a presidency that functions like a monarchy, with loyalty to the leader, not the Constitution, as the highest political virtue. The secretary's dodges and half-answers aren't about confusion. They're about keeping that door open for the next round of abuses. Democrats like Ramirez are doing the work, using oversight, shining light on corruption, and forcing these officials to account for their actions in public. But that's not enough on its own. It's on all of us to recognize what's at stake, stay informed, and hold this kind of authoritarian power grab accountable at the ballot box. Because if there's one thing the last few years have made clear, it's this. Trumpism isn't a temporary political trend. It's an active threat to the foundational principles of the United States. And the only way to stop it is to make sure those who abuse power are removed from office and replaced with leaders who actually believe in and will fight for democracy, equality, and justice for all. This has been Tariq Melrose Vlogs, where we cut through the spin, call out the hypocrisy, and defend the core values that make this country worth fighting for. If you're tired of watching Trump's allies turn government into their personal power club, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe so we can keep holding them accountable. Because democracy doesn't defend itself. We have to do it together.